Today, we're going to talk about parenting a redemptive gift servant child. Redemptive gift of servant is probably one of the most liked redemptive gifts of all the redemptive gifts. Because they like to create a comfortable space for people, they're willing to serve, willing to do the hard things that other people won't, and people like that. Another thing is that they have a tendency to uh, give away authority. And so people like that too, because they're like, sure, I'll take your authority. So a servant wired child is definitely one of the more easier, if I can say that, redemptive gifts to interact with. So we're going to talk about that today. So the core characteristics of a servant child are that they're naturally helpful and eager to assist without being asked. They find joy in meeting practical needs and making others feel comfortable. See, this is why people like them, because they don't have to be asked, especially if you're the parent of a servant child. You can see that this child is naturally helpful and they like to make sure that you're comfortable. They're also often quiet in group settings, but are highly observant of what is actually needed because they feel fulfilled when they know that they've made someone else's day better or easier or more comfortable. And they tend to prefer behind the scenes roles rather than being in the spotlight. So you can see how a child is maybe more of your easygoing, your more content child, and more willing to please child. And this is important as a parent of a servant child to nurture because you want to grow that in them because it is their gifting. And so it's important to continue to grow in them that willingness for responsibilities, that they can be faithful and dependable for others as they get older. You also want to nurture their compassion, that they're not just doing it to earn accolades or favor, but they're doing it because they are sensitive to others and how they're feeling. And that is important in the redemptive design because you want them to stay connected to God and how He's feeling and how He wants to bring the people that they're serving closer to Him. You also want to nurture their hardworking nature because they are willing to do small, seemingly insignificant tasks. And so that's something to continue to develop in them and instill in them. So they value relationships deeply and are committed to the people that they love. And so that is something that you want to nurture within them, grow within them, and help them to see as a good thing, but then also make sure that they're not putting that loyalty to family members or loyalty to the people that they love above God. So a couple of the potential struggles that servant children may have is that they can very easily overextend themselves. They will say yes to anything, especially if it will make somebody comfortable. And so it's important to kind of be a barrier for servant children in regards to it's okay to say no. It's okay to that if somebody doesn't feel comfortable, that's not always your responsibility. So making sure that they're not overextending themselves or that they're finding identity within that service. A lot of times it's easy for servant wired children to say, "Oh, I am a servant and therefore people love me because I serve them." That is a legitimacy lie. We don't want that. Um, that is it is what you do that flows out of your relationship with God that allows you to serve others and to help them feel comfortable. So making sure that they're not defining their worth by what they do, but instead of who they are in Christ, really instilling identity statements within them instead of those action things. I am what I do. That could potentially be a struggle for servant wired children. They also have a problem with boundaries. They feel guilty when they do say no. So just like overextending themselves, that would be an area of growth and teaching and training in the servant child that just because your sister is going to get upset by that doesn't mean that you have to do what your sister says type thing. So it's important to help them and train them that boundaries are a good thing. Boundaries are important and that you shouldn't feel guilty for setting up those boundaries. Another area of struggle is disappointing others or neglecting their own needs. And so a lot of times servant wired children will put everybody else first before themselves. And so it's important to help them understand that they can do that, but out of the overflow of what God is asking them to do. And from that position of love for themselves and for others, not just for others. So, a couple of parenting tips for you today in regards to how can you better parent your servant wired child is to make sure that you affirm their identity before they take action. So, it's very easy with a servant child to get into that routine of them just taking care of things themselves. And it's going to be important for you as the parent to affirm their identity, that they are loved, they are chosen, they are accepted just as they are, not because they do these things well. It's also important as the parent to teach healthy boundaries. If you as the parent don't have healthy boundaries yourself, then that's going to be an area of growth for you so that you can model that for your kids. And making sure that the servant understands the importance of rest and a Sabbath at an early age will be super beneficial for the servant later on in life when they have a family and they have a job and they have volunteer organizations and things like that, where they've already been taught at a young age that rest is important to God, Sabbath is important to God. And how do you instill that into your life now instead of later when it's really hard to get out of those routines because they're so invested in serving. So that is one way you as a parent can help a servant wired child is by teaching and training them to rest, that rest is a good thing and that it's okay to say no. And this goes along with the next one, which is balance. Help them understand that serving flows from the intimacy with God, not from striving to get his approval or not for striving to make him comfortable. It comes out of that love of God, that intimacy with God, that time that they've spent with God. That's how they can serve and not try to gain his approval. So that's important for servant wired children to understand at a young age too, because just like I said, when they go and they start a family or they have a job or things like that, it's going to get a lot harder for them to understand that they do need balance, that they do have to be intentional with balance, because it's going to be very easy for them to just want to keep serving everyone and getting their identity that way instead of having intimacy with God and fulfilling their tank then and then moving into serving others out of a redemptive design instead of from striving. I think a lot of times we can easily see that in ourselves, that it's a whole lot easier to get that affirmation from people when you're serving them. And that's what fills your tank instead of your intimacy with God. But when we start to kind of take a step back and look at the redemptive gifts this way, is that I'm first designed to receive from the Father and then bring about redemption after that. It completely turns everything up on its head. And so it's better to start teaching your kids now how to do that and operate in their design now when they're young, and teach and train them before they go out into the world and they have to learn about it then and all the other things that they're trying to learn. So it's important to, instill those habits, instill that identity in them now. It's also important for you as the parent of a servant child to create safe spaces to share emotion. Help them verbalize when they feel tired or overlooked or underappreciated. Because a lot of times servants can get easily kind of swept under the rug. They're, like I said, they're kind of the easy children. They're easygoing and they're the ones everybody kind of leans on. And so if they don't feel comfortable being able to express how they truly feel, even if it's not right, or even if you don't agree, then they're just going to kind of keep pressing that down and down and down. And that's just going to kind of create more of a fleshy servant. We don't want that. So we want the space for them to kind of express how they feel, understand that that's part of their design is that they will serve and serve and serve and serve until they have nothing left, which is why it's important for them to understand their intimacy with God is how their service flows out. But if they don't know, if they don't have a safe space to express that, it's going to be really hard for them to identify that and to connect with God on that level because they're going to feel resentful for feeling unappreciated and loved, that kind of thing. So it's important to have that safe space, to have that place where they can express themselves, like I said, even if it's not right or you don't agree, and kind of help walk them through some of them. And then it's important to give meaningful responsibilities. Let them contribute, but avoid using them as the family's default helper. So giving them really meaningful responsibilities, things that are meaningful to them, that they find fulfillment in, that are not just because they're the easy ones to do it. And I would also go the next step to teaching and training them how to release some of those responsibilities, whether that's to one of their younger siblings or to somebody else in the family that they have taken on that responsibility. And then now they're going to teach and train the next person how to do that because the servant has a little bit of struggle with releasing responsibilities. Like they have a tendency to say, I'm just going to do this because I'm good at it. I like it. And I don't think anybody can do it better than me. So it's important to teach and train them how to release some of those responsibilities also, not just to serve, 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 serve. So those are some ways that you can help a servant gifted redemptive gift child in your home and teaching and training and growing them how to walk in their redemptive gift and not use it as a place that is negative or like taken advantage of. Because if they know their design, they know how they operate and they're grown and kind of like develop in that, then they're going to be less likely to get burnt out or overwhelmed or frustrated because they don't even understand their design. How can anybody else? So I hope you found this helpful. I do have on my website the parenting mini guide available for $15. These are the things that are on the parenting mini guide, but it also includes like activities that you can do with your servant gifted child, prayers and declarations you can pray over your servant gifted child, conversation starters with your servant gifted child. There's also the redemptive gift blessing cards, which are super helpful for different redemptive gift children as well to help grow and bless their design instead of curse it. So I hope you found this helpful. You can check out my website for more details at ashleytilford.com and check out the next video to learn about parenting the redemptive gift of teacher child.